Good evening, people. Welcome to J-Ho, the Sports Dude. Thank you for listening to the New England Boston Sports Podcast. And let me turn this off. All right, then. Thank you for listening. Football season has ended. Baseball spring training has begun. So we're in a new era for Boston sports. Now that football is over, there's obviously going to be less sports to talk about. Spring training's around, but I don't know if there's much to talk about with spring training. So, but don't worry, there are still plenty of topics to talk about, including one that actually kind of pertained to football this week. And unfortunately, it involves Robert Kraft, and it's a pretty big story in the news, and we're going to have to talk about it. And after that, we're going to have to talk about the Bruins' win streak, which has been very impressive considering David Pastrnak hasn't not been playing. And then, unfortunately, we have to go back to the Boston Celtics. Okay. So, we definitely have a lot of stuff to talk about this week. So, let's start off with the biggest news by far of the week so far, and it's the Robert Kraft scandal. So I'm gonna give you all the details, and I'll let you know what the situation is and what is the possible outcome for this situation, and then we can then I'll talk about, and I'll just give you my brief opinion about the whole thing. It's really ugly. So here's how the story goes. So last Friday, news broke that Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, was charged with soliciting prostitution at Orchards of Asia Day Spa, a massage parlor in Jupiter, Florida. And also, I'm gonna have to describe the case a little bit. I'm not gonna go as graphic as the police reports, which I have heard, and they're pretty ugly. But I will have to describe them a bit. So I apologize if you if you get a little uncomfortable hearing this. So I'll be as clean as possible. So he was officially charged with 2 charges of first degree solicitation on Monday. Kraft was charged as a result of a multi-agency investigation into sex trafficking in Florida. So, yeah, he was a part of an investigation that has been going on for quite a bit into sex trafficking in Florida. And there are about 100 arrest warrants, including 23 in Palm Beach County. And this is a result of a 6-month investigation, and more people are going to be implicated in this. So, and 10 spas have been closed from Palm Beach in Orlando, and several people have been charged with trafficking that have been taken into custody. And also, another high-profile businessman, former Citigroup president John Haven, also was charged with paying for sex at orchards at Asia Spa. Also, Robert Kraft has denied any wrongdoing, and he has denied any wrongdoing. So I'll read the statement that a spokesperson for Kraft has said on a Friday. So we categorically deny that Mr. Kraft engaged in any illegal activity. Because it is a judicial matter, we will not be commenting any further. And also, the NFL released a statement. So the NFL said the NFL is aware of the ongoing law enforcement matter and will continue to monitor developments. And it was also found at the massage parlor that a sex trafficking ring with workers was found, in which workers were being forced to perform sex acts. And police said some of the victims were recruited from overseas, believing that they were coming for legitimate jobs. And it's pretty horrible if you read about what happened at this place. The police said that 7 days a week the victims were were forced to perform sex acts in order to engage for money, and some of the victims average 8 clients per day, and they said that the women worked in horrible working conditions, where they worked in basically a cramped and like unhygienic quarter at the salon, and they were basically prisoners in this place. They weren't really allowed to leave, and they averaged about 1,500 men per year. So, this is this is really horrible and disgusting and inhumane. So, reading about this stuff is I don't know, it makes you want to puke. And the owner of the spa said she had no idea that this was going on. I don't. It's a little hard for me to believe, but whatever. We'll see. We'll see. She'll see her day in court. So, and also the police say that they have video of Robert Kraft on camera from gathering evidence to prove that he was soliciting prostitutes. And also, the 2 days in which Kraft is being charged are January 19th and the 20th. And the police said that on the 19th they have videotape of him engaging in a sex act and him handing over an undetermined amount of cash. And the police said that in the charging documents that Kraft was back in the spa 17 hours on the 20th, and he was videotaped engaging in sex acts before paying with a $100 bill and another bill. So that's all I'll say on the documents. So this would place Kraft about mere hours before the Patriots AFC Championship game. So there's no proof that he knew anything about the sex trafficking. So the charge is just him soliciting prostitution, which is a misdemeanor, which is just a minor wrongdoing. So why don't we actually get into both the potential punishments for this case. We'll start with the legal, then we'll go into what the NFL might do, and then we'll go from there. So as far as the legal part of this, the max would be a first degree misdemeanor is punishable by the max would be 1 year in jail, a $5,000 fine, and 100 hours of community service, including a mandatory course on the dangers of human trafficking. And because Kraft is this is his first offense, and he's 77 years old, that means he might get that means he most likely will probably get the lighter sentence, which would be basically just a fee and 100 hours of community service. So I think in Robert Kraft's case, I think he'd probably want to try to get a plea deal, because you don't. Kraft doesn't want to give himself any chance to have any prison time, and if he goes to trial, then there's a good chance that he could get off scot-free, but there's also a good chance that he might go to prison. So I think what Kraft is probably going to do is try to get a plea deal, and I don't, because Robert Kraft's a big name, it might not be as easy as it seems, but I think that's what the position that Robert Kraft's in from a legal standpoint right now. And he does not have to appear in court, because this is a misdemeanor. So I think what the most likely outcome would be is Kraft's attorneys negotiate a plea deal with the prosecutors, and then Robert Kraft would have to do community service and pay a fee. Now, from the what punishment he could get from the NFL. So there are actually a few precedents from owners, and plus also owners, they do get punishments. In fact, they're held to a higher standard compared to players. So, and there are a few precedents for owners being punished. So the most recent one is Jim Irsay, who in March of 2014 was arrested in Indianapolis on suspicion of drunken driving and drug possession. He had 29,000 in cash in his vehicle, stashed in a briefcase and a laundry bag, along with prescription drug bottles. The toxicity report reported that Irsay was on OxyContin, hydrocodone, and alpha-zolum in his system. Sorry if I mispronounced that. And he was slurring in his speech. He had trouble standing at the time of his arrest. So Irsay pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge while under the influence. So as far as his legal punishment, he was sentenced to 60 days in jail, but he only served 2 days. And the NFL punished him by suspending him for 6 games and fining him $500,000. And basically, Roger Goodell said that there is no further punishment because Irsay's actions did not have a competitive consequence. And also, there's Jerry Richardson. Actually, I misspoke. This is probably the most recent case of this of a punishment to an owner. So, in December 2017, Sports Illustrated released an investigation report into the culture of sexual harassment within the Carolina Panthers organization. Team owner Jeff Richardson has reportedly reached settlements with several employees. So the NFL punished Richardson by fining him $2.75 million. But Richardson was already in the process of selling the team. So, and he actually sold the team on the same day as the Sports Illustrated released the story. So, not maybe a coincidence? Yeah, probably. And another case is Eddie DeBartolo Jr. So he was the owner of the 49ers during their heyday in the 80s and 90s when they were the preeminent dynasty of the NFL. And this was kind of the situation that this kind of reminds me of. So Eddie DeBartolo Jr. was fined and suspended for the entire 2019 season after pleading guilty in connection to a Louisiana gambling scandal involving the state's former governor Edwin Edwards. So he pled guilty to a felony charge on failing to report that the Louisiana's former governor alleged extorted $400,000 from him to win a casino license. And Eddie DeBartolo had a plea deal, but he had to pay $1 million in penalties. He served 2 years of probation and testified in future trials against the governor and his son. And also he seized control of this franchise to his sister Dennis York in 2000. So, and the York family continues to run the 49ers with very mixed results, but that was the punishment for Eddie DeBartolo Jr. So, because I compare that to Kraft, because Eddie DeBartolo Jr. was an owner of high regard and owner of a dynasty too. So I would imagine that the minimum would be Jim Irsay's punishment for Robert Kraft, which would be a 6-game suspension and a $500,000 fine. So I imagine that'd probably be the minimum of what Robert Kraft would get. If I were to guess, I would imagine something around there, just a suspension and a fine. Now, a lot of people have brought this up. Would Robert Kraft be forced to sell the team? Like right after this scandal happened, this was kind of, people were wondering about this. I would say it's highly unlikely. So, in order for this to happen by the owners, there would have to be a vote in which 23 of the 31 eligible owners. The Green Bay Packers don't have an owner; they're owned by the city of Green Bay, so 31 owners would have to vote for him to lose his team. I don't think the owners would want to set a precedent in which a misdemeanor would force them to lose their team. So I don't think this would happen. There is a possibility that Kraft could be persuaded to hand over his team to save face. So then possibly the next guy to own the team would be Kraft's son, Jonathan Kraft, who already plays a large role in the organization. Which would be the obvious successor. I still don't think that's going to happen, but I think that would be more likely to happen than him to be voted out. And so a lot of people would compare this to Jerry Richardson and he lost his team, so Robert Kraft should lose his team. So here's the thing. I don't think that should be the case. I think in the case with Jerry Richardson, I think Shannon Sharp made this point on Undisputed, and I actually agree with him. The thing about Jerry Richardson, this was something that was going on in the organization. This was a systemic thing. So this affected people working for Jerry Richardson. So, and when you have a virus, you have to in order to get rid of the virus, you have to get rid of the cause of the virus. So I think in the case of Robert Kraft, I think this is just something that he did himself, and there's no proof right now that anybody else was involved with this. So I think Robert Kraft should just be punished, and he shouldn't be forced to sell his team. Like if Jonathan Kraft or Bill Belichick or Tom Brady or anybody in the Patriots organization, if they were part of this, then I think you would have a good case to maybe force Kraft to sell the team. But for now, the evidence just shows that this is possibly just Robert Kraft. So I don't think he should sell the team. And also there's Donald Sterling, who was kicked out of the NBA for saying a bunch of racist stuff. But in the case of Donald Sterling, one, they were trying to kick him out for a while because he was such a horrible owner, and two, that affects the entire organization. Because this case affects Robert Kraft. It doesn't really affect the Patriots. I mean, obviously, Robert Kraft's one of the faces of the Patriots, but it only reflects poorly on Robert Kraft. Would affect poorly on Robert Kraft. Because it's not. It wouldn't affect the. It wouldn't affect free agents. It wouldn't affect. It's not going to affect. It's not going to affect free agents. It's not going to affect the people working with Robert Kraft. Because the thing about Donald Sterling saying racist stuff, let's face it, the majority of the players in the NBA are black, so players would not want to play for the Clippers or Donald Sterling. So I think those situations are completely different. And there was also another suggestion, a dumber suggestion. So you know who Bart Scott is, that player who used to play for the Jets and Ravens, who right now works for WEI, the idiot, suggested to take away all the draft picks for the Patriots. That's kind of dumb, because, I mean, this doesn't... What Robert Kraft did does not really affect the competitive balance between teams. Like, Spygate and Deflategate, those, even though I think those are a bit over-dramatized to the impact, I mean, you could argue... you could make an argument that they might have made a slight advantage, so I could understand taking away draft picks in those cases. This, no, this is just issue. This is just a Robert Kraft issue. Like when someone smokes weed, you don't take draft picks. In a domestic violence case, you don't lose draft picks. even PEDs, you don't lose draft picks. Every case with a loss of draft picks is a team thing and an on the field thing. So, and this is none of those. So, so I disagree with the legal expert Bart Scott. I say that sarcastically. So, and honestly, in my opinion, the real punishment would be that this is a really bad look for Robert Kraft, and he just gets really embarrassed. Like right when this happened, the memes already came out of Robert Kraft and this whole thing, and basically his reputation is sullied. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's completely destroyed, but it's sullied, and it embarrasses the NFL and embarrasses the Patriots, and it embarrassed Robert Kraft, and like I said earlier, this is bigger than Robert Kraft. This is apparently a big thing that's going on in Florida, and the police are trying to really crack down on this. So yeah, this is a really bad look for Robert Kraft, and it's a very unfortunate situation. And I would have liked to have gone an off season without any controversy with the Patriots, but I guess we're gonna have to deal with another controversy. And of course, there's the question of why would he do this? I don't know. Maybe some people find kinks in the idea of just getting away with stuff like this. I don't know. So, all right, then why don't we take a quick break, and then we come back. We'll talk about something much better with the Bruins, who have been playing really, really well lately. All right, welcome back to J-Ho, the Sports Dude, and now let's talk about the Bruins for a bit, who have been playing, like I said before the breakup, been playing really, really well. This kind of reminds me of the last year when, on the second half stretch, they started to really hit their stride. So, but first, we have to talk about some trade deadline news. So, the Bruins made some pretty minor moves at the trade deadline. So the Bruins traded Ryan Donato for a 5th-round pick for the Minnesota Wild for veteran Charlie Coyle. The Bruins also acquired Marcus Johansson from the New Jersey Devils in exchange for 2 draft picks. So essentially what the Bruins are doing is they're trying to add depth to their lineup. And honestly, I don't know if these really make the Bruins that much better. Obviously, from what their biggest need is scoring depth, but and I'm not really sure if these guys they're not real difference makers. And like whenever the Bruins trade a player, I'm generally worried because I mean we all remember what happened with Tyler Seguin, and Frank Vetrano is actually looking pretty good. So I always get a little worried when the Bruins trade a player, but honestly, these are pretty minor moves. I don't know if these moves really elevate the Bruins compared to where they were, but it's always good to add depth. So, and Johansson does fill their need for a top 6 forward. So hopefully he can add some experience to the Bruins. And also, interestingly enough, Brad Marchand has a history with Johansson. Last year he had a cheap shot at Johansson, and he was suspended for 5 games. So, and all right then, why don't we actually go into the games? And this stretch by the Bruins has really been very impressive. So let's go over what happened this week. So we start against the Blackhawks, who actually at the time have been playing really good. They had a 7-game win streak, and Patrick Kane has been simply amazing. So during this stretch, and Rask was the goalie for this game. The Bruins won 6-3. The Bruins came out of the gate and were up 3-1, and then both teams scored twice in the second period, and in the third period they basically just put them away, with the Bruins outscoring the Blackhawks 2-1. And so as far as stats for this game, Bruins had 37 shots. Blackhawks had 26 shots. hits. Bruins had 26 hits, and Blackhawks had 18. And giveaways, Bruins had 10, and the Blackhawks had 22. So a pretty convincing win by the Bruins, especially against a team that was looking really good during their winning streak. Brad Marchand had a goal with 3 assists. Danton Heinen had a goal with 2 assists. Jake DeBrusk had a goal and 2 assists. And very good win against a very hot team. And then the next game, they play the Anaheim Ducks, who are not a very good team. In fact, they're arguably the worst team in the NHL. A lot of teams will give them a run for their money, but they're one of the worst. The Bruins won 3-0, and they basically scored every single period and won the game 3-0. The Bruins had 29 shots, Ducks had 30 hits. Bruins had 22, Ducks had 27. Block shots, Bruins had 13, and the Ducks had 16. So for the most part, pretty convincing win over a pretty terrible team. Halak blocked 30 shots and had a shutout, and Brendan Carlo had an assist, and that was that game. And then next week, the Bruins played the Kings and won 4-2 after the exciting overtime win against them. So in the first period, Jake DeBrusk scored the first goal in the first period, and then Ilya Kovalchuk scored again, and then Brad Marchand scored in the second period. And then in the third period, Alex Alfalo scored to tie the game. Then after that, the Bruins closed the game with Charlie McAvoy getting a game-winning goal, and Patrice Bergeron hitting a empty net goal to seal the game. So shots, Bruins had 24, Kings had 25. Hits, Bruins had 19, Kings had 29. Block shots, Bruins had 17, and Kings had 9. So as far as stars for this game, Charlie McAvoy had a goal. Tuukka Rask blocked 23 shots on 25 shots from the Kings, and Brad Marchand had a goal too. So pretty good game by the Bruins. And the next week, this was part of a California trip. And then the next game, the Bruins got to play the San Jose Sharks on primetime TV and against one of the best teams in the NHL. And oh boy, this was definitely an interesting game. They won 6-5 in overtime. So Bruins start off really hot. The Bruins go up 3-0 in the first period, scoring 3 goals. And then next thing you know, they kind of fall apart a bit. Joe Thornton scored the goal to near the end of the first period. Then Joe Pavelski scored in the second period. And then Jake DeBrusk scored. And then Joe Thornton scored again. And Logan Couturier scored. And Joe Thornton scored in the third period to get the Sharks the lead at 5-4. And then Chris Wagner was able to get a goal to tie the game near the end of the third period. And in overtime, Charlie McAvoy got a goal to win the game. So as far as stats for the game, the Bruins were outshot 38-20. Both teams had 24 hits. Giveaways, Bruins had 6, Sharks had 10. Takeaways, Bruins had 10, Sharks had 12. So, and on power play opportunities, Bruins were 2 for 4, and Sharks were for 1-2. So a pretty tough victory for the Bruins, and pretty controversial one. If you watch this game, so there are a few very controversial moments. One was the refs were not very good in this game. In my opinion, both sides I will agree one was kind of more egregious than the other. The first was a potential goal by the Bruins in the first period. Um, and from and it was called a no goal. I mean, I thought it got in, but I guess you could make an argument it didn't. But that would have put the Bruins up 1-0, and potentially 4-0 to so they wouldn't have to worry about falling apart, and the game would probably been over. Um, but yeah, that was, and then there near the third period, Chris Wagner scored a goal. He had his stick pretty high. That would probably be a high stick goal, so that probably shouldn't have counted. So yeah, so this victory, I mean, it's still a victory, and you'll take it. But also, I forgot to mention that on the game-winning goal, the Bruins were pretty lucky because Evander Kane left the ice on to end his shift, and that allowed Jake DeBrusk to be free, which allowed him to make a pass, and then Charlie McAvoy was able to get the puck and hit a game-winning goal in overtime. So, yeah, it was definitely lucky. It was the Bruins were pretty lucky that they were able to win this game, but sometimes you need a little luck. So, even though they probably should have lost that game. Next, they played the Vegas Golden Knights in Vegas, and they won 3-2 in the shootout. And before this whole point streak went along, I can't, like I said before, I always expected the Bruins to lose in a shootout, but because of this streak, I've been a little more confident in them, and that's what happened in this game. So as far as the statistics, the Vegas had 33 shots, Bruins had 27 hits. Vegas had 38 hits, and Bruins had 24 hits. Block takeaways, Vegas had 17, and the Bruins had 9. So overall, based on the statistics, you would think that the Bruins won this game, but they didn't. So in the first period, Jake DeBrusk scored first, and then Riley Smith scored for the Vegas Golden Knights in the first period, and then there were no goals scored in the second period. And then in the third period, Brad Marchand scored to take the lead, and then pretty soon after that, Nate Schmidt scored a game-tying goal. And then in overtime, nobody scored. And then in the shootout, on the first shot of the shootout, Jake DeBrusk hit a goal on Marc-Andre Fleury. And then William Karlsson hit a goal on Halak to tie the game. And then for a while, nobody could get a goal. And eventually, David Backes, who the announcers and I'm sure a lot of people were wondering why is he in the shootout, but luckily he was able to get the game-winning goal, and then the Bruins got one in a shootout. So good win for the Bruins against a solid Vegas team. Also, the star of the game was Halak for blocking 31 of 33 shots. Next, the Bruins played the St. Louis Blues, and then unfortunately their win streak ended in St. Louis in another shootout, but this time they lost. They lost 2-1. So stats for this game: Bruins had 32 shots, 29 shots for the Blues. Hits: the Blues had 30 hits, Bruins had 17. Block shots: Bruins had 23, and the Blues had 6. Takeaways: Bruins had 7, and the Blues had 15. So overall, both offenses were not really clicking. Tuukka Rask had a really good game, blocking 28 for 29 shots. But after a while, when you especially you could see that in the Vegas game and the Sharks game, when you play a lot of these close games, when it come down to the wire, eventually it's not going to last forever. The good fortune will eventually turn the other way. But And this was against a St. Louis Blues team that actually had been playing really well, so nothing to be too ashamed of. And then next, the Bruins had a rematch against the San Jose Sharks after that very controversial game a few days ago. And so obviously the Sharks have definitely wanted revenge against the Bruins because I'm sure they feel like they kind of got screwed in that game. However, this game was in Boston instead of San Jose. And unlike the last game, the Bruins completely dominated. So the Bruins won 4-1. When the game, so in first period, both Boston and San Jose got a goal, but in the second period, the Bruins scored 3 straight goals on the San Jose Sharks, and then completely took them out of the game, and nobody scored in the third period. So pretty dominant victory by the Bruins. So shots, Bruins outshot the Sharks 32-20. Hits, Bruins had 21 hits. Sharks had 27. Block shots, Bruins had 16. The Sharks had 7. Giveaways, the Sharks had 15, and the Bruins had 13. So Jake DeBrusk had a goal in this game. David Krejci had a goal and assist in this game. Brad Marchand had a goal and 2 assists in this game. So pretty dominant victory for the Bruins against the Sharks. And then next is definitely one of those games where you mark the calendar for. It's against the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have been on a historical pace and so far has been the best team in hockey. So when you play a team like Tampa Bay, considering how great of a year they have, you want to measure yourself up to them. And the Bruins not only did measure up to them, they beat them really badly. And this is a Tampa Bay team that at this point already had 102 points and had a 10-game win streak. So this was a very dangerous Tampa Bay team, and the Bruins still beat them and dominated them too. So as far as the stats, get a load of this. The Bruins outshot the Lightning 41-21. Wow. And against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then as far as hits, Lightning had 35 hits, Bruins had 22. Block shots, Lightning had 16, Bruins had 12. Giveaways, Lightning had 16, and Bruins had 7. So yeah, crazy. In fact, basically in the first period, the Bruins were dominating the Lightning as far as shots, but they just couldn't get in the net. And then in the second period, they were able to get a goal. And then in the third period, they basically just put away the Tampa Bay Lightning by scoring, similar to San Jose, scoring 3 goals, but this time it was basically in 2 minutes. They scored 3 straight goals. It was crazy. And they could have had the shutout, but Rask allowed in a goal that probably shouldn't have went in. Yeah, it was kind of a slap shot that just kind of found its way into the net. But whatever, win's more important than a shutout. So yeah, So as far as when you look at this win streak, this is the apex. This is what you're going to think about when you think about this streak that the Bruins have been on. And it's, like I said before, it's really impressive considering David Pastrnak, the best goal scorer on the Bruins, isn't on the team. So what has really stood out to me about the Bruins is, with the exception of a few games, their defense has really stepped up for them, which has allowed them to win all these games. And with the David Pastrnak out, you have, you always have Brad Marchand and Patrice Bergeron contributing to the team, but you got players like Jake DeBrusk and David Krejci really stepping up and scoring for the Bruins. So and Tuukka Rask. And speaking of Tuukka Rask really looks like Tuukka Rask. He's I remember earlier in the year we were talking about how I was wondering if who was going to be the starting goaltender. I think at this point it's safe to say Tuukka Rask has solidified himself as the starting goaltender, and Halak has improved and from his minor slump, and he's proven to be a good backup goalie. So very impressive streak for the Bruins. And then next, the Boston Bruins are playing the New Jersey Devils, who have been not that great this year. So hopefully they can pull out a win. So all right then, why don't we take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna have to talk about the Boston Celtics. Yay. So, welcome back to J-Ho the Sports Dude, and now we're back to talking about the Boston Celtics. If you don't remember, last week was really bad. They were coming off two of the worst losses in franchise history, and how they recovered from that. All right, let's see. Let's talk about how the the Boston Celtics have been doing. So basically, going into this week, I had a lot of questions about this team, of just how awful they've been, and how their offense was trash, and their defense was trash, and the team was just trash. And yeah, there's still a lot of questions. So, I mean, the week started well. They beat the 76ers even when the odds weren't good. I mean, basically the 76ers have had their problems against the Celtics, but if there was a time to beat them, this probably would have been, you would imagine this would be the time that they would beat the Celtics. Like, the 76ers were looking good with getting Tobias Harris. It was in Philadelphia. The Celtics had no Kyrie Irving, and they were coming off probably their worst loss of the year. And so, but instead, this was a close game that came down to the wire, and at the end, the Celtics made the plays they need to make to win the game. The Celtics won 112 to 109. Gordon Hayward had 26 points, which led the Celtics. Jason Tatum also had 20 points, and Al Horford had 23 points. So overall, good team effort. And for the 76ers, you're wondering, like, is this just a mental thing? Because on paper, even with Kyrie Irving there, they look like a more talented team. But it just seems like every time they play, I remember on Christmas Day they played the Celtics. They just can't beat them. Like, Al Horford, even though plays Joel Embiid pretty well, they take advantage of the fact that Ben Simmons can't shoot. I mean, just something. I don't know. I mean, I believe they have a coaching advantage. I think Brad Stevens is a better coach than Brett Brown. I don't know. I mean, I'm happy that they just can't seem to figure out the Celtics out. But yeah, you would think at some point they would be able to beat the Celtics, but they just can't seem to. It's just like it kind of seems like a mental hurdle, like how when the Maple Leafs play the Bruins. So, all right, the next game. So in the next game, the Celtics played the Detroit Pistons without Irving again. So the Boston Celtics won this game 118 to 110. Blake Griffin had a really good game with 32 points, but unfortunately, it really wasn't worth anything since the Celtics won. And Jason Tatum had 19 points. So in the first first half, first three quarters, the Boston Celtics basically dominated the game. In the fourth quarter, the Pistons kind of fought back and they made a push, but unfortunately, for the Pistons, it didn't really matter, and the Celtics were able to hold on. So, pretty good overall effort. And Jaylen Brown had 17 points. Marcus Smart had 16. Al Horford had 17. Gordon Hayward had 18, and Marcus Morris had 11. So very good overall team effort. And then next, Kyrie Irving came back and played on the road against Milwaukee Bucks, who currently is the number 1 seed in the East, with possibly the league MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo. So this was a pretty entertaining game. This is definitely Kyrie Irving had 22 points and Giannis had 30. Um, the thing about the thing about Kyrie Irving, he did have the most points out of everybody on the team, but he didn't really shoot particularly well. He was 9 at 27, so that's not very good. So this was pretty much a defensive battle, and both teams not really scoring that well. Both teams not shooting particularly well. Milwaukee shot 42% and Boston shot 38%. So it's pretty not the cleanest game ever. And the Celtics had the opportunity to get the last shot, but unfortunately Kyrie Irving was not able to get the shot in. Even though it looked like there was a foul at the end, so there probably should have been some foul shots. But like I said, I've said this plenty of times. You can't rely on the refs to win a game. So and honestly, I've always kind of felt like the Celtics don't get the calls in the NBA. But honestly, you shouldn't let the refs determine the game. So, and Milwaukee's a great team, so it's not the end of the world. And plus, it was in Milwaukee, but kind of upsetting because you want to, one, you need to catch up with everybody, and two, it would have been really nice to beat the Milwaukee Bucks. And then next, you would think that they would have an easy victory after playing one of the best teams in the NBA against the Chicago Bulls, but instead, they somehow lost to the Chicago Bulls. Oh, my God. So they lost this game 126 to 116. So in the first quarter, they looked pretty decent against a team they're supposed to beat. They led 33 to 28. And next thing you know, in the second quarter, they were outscored 36 to 18. You heard that. 36 to 18 against a team that is tanking to a team that is awful. Are you kidding me? So Kyrie Irving had 37 points, which is very, very nice. Here's the only problem. Zach LaVine had 42 points, and Lauri Markkanen had 35 points. Ugh. I mean, was that LaVine and Markkanen, or was that Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan? Are you kidding me? Like, this wasn't a close game. They got destroyed. The score makes it closer than it actually was, but this was an embarrassment. How do you lose? And the last time they played them in Chicago, they beat them by I think 56 points. Last time, and this time you get embarrassed to the tanking Bulls, who a while ago were telling the team that they didn't want to practice. All right, and then next the Boston Celtics played the Toronto Raptors in Toronto, and then they got their butts whipped. I mean, first quarter was pretty competitive. Boston led 32 to 30. And then in the second quarter, they got outscored 36 to 13. And then in the third quarter, they got outscored 29 to 23. And it was basically a non-contest. Toronto essentially just took a dump on the Boston Celtics. It was horrible. I mean, field goal percentage, Toronto's shot 48.9%. Boston shot 38.4%. And get this stat. From three, Toronto's shot 47.2. Guess how well Boston shot from three? 20%. Yeah, a 27.2% differential from three. and 14 turnovers to Toronto's 9. This is how you get blown out, folks. Yeah. I mean, I understand Toronto's a great team. They're at home. You're probably going to lose, considering how you looked against the Chicago Bulls. I mean, all I ask is you just don't get embarrassed. I mean, you're fighting. You probably might see these guys in the playoffs. Can you not look like a JV team? Ay. And then next, the Boston Celtics played the Portland Trailblazers. I mean, the upside is they looked better against them than they did against the Toronto Raptors, which isn't really saying much. So the Blazers beat the Celtics 27-92, and I watched a bit. I gotta say this was one of the most inept offensive games I've ever seen. It was really hard to watch. So for the first 2 quarters, this game was pretty close. And then in third quarter, Portland outscored Boston 31-22. Boston would fight back, outscoring the Blazers 28-23 in the fourth quarter, but didn't really matter. So in this game, the superstars really showed up. Kyrie Irving scored 31 points. Damian Lillard scored 33 points, and they really couldn't stop him at all. I mean, get a load of this. From 3-point range, Boston shot 17.9%, and Portland scored 18.2%. That is dreadful. I mean, that's atrocious. I mean, I did hear some people say that put a positive spin on that game, in which they said that they saw fight from the Celtics. I mean, they look better than they did. Like I said, they look better than they did against Toronto. But I mean, at this point, fighting hard doesn't really matter. Like I saw that as a positive in the earlier when the Celtics were rebuilding. But the Celtics are in win now. Like, playing hard doesn't matter. What matters is you win the game. Who cares? Like, yeah, I expect you to play hard. Like, you're supposed to win. And both offenses were really bad, but Boston's was even worse. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it's nice that they look better than they did against Toronto, but I was still pretty mad because, I mean, that was their 4th straight loss. All right, moving on to the next game. So hopefully the Celtics were hoping to break their 4-game skid against the terrible Washington Wizards, who have been pretty bad this year. You would think that they would beat them, considering how they're not very good. But you also remember that they lost to the Chicago Bulls. However, the Celtics did win this game. They won 107-96. So Boston pretty much outplayed them in the first quarter. Even though near the end of the first quarter, the Wizards were able to climb back. In the first quarter, Boston outscored Washington 30-20. For the most part, in the first quarter, they went out of the gate. They basically dominated them, but Washington was able to come back. And then in the second and third quarter, Washington outscored. So second quarter, Washington outscored Boston 25-19, and in the third quarter, 36-33. So Washington really climbed back and was able to take a lead. But in the fourth quarter, Boston dominated 25-15. So they really locked down on defense, and the Boston Celtics were able to pull a victory against the Washington Wizards. I mean, like, the 3-point shooting was, better than Portland and Boston, but still wasn't great. Boston shot 28.6 from 3. Washington shot 26.3 from 3. So both teams were not exactly great from 3, but Boston was just simply better than Washington. but Bradley Beal had 29 points, so good for him. Al Horford had the most points with 18 points. Kyrie Irving had 13 points and 12 assists. So good win for the Celtics to break the skid, even though even though the Washington Wizards are not a great team. And so then next thing you know, the Boston Celtics played the Houston Rockets, and you would hope that breaking the skid would wake the Celtics up, but it didn't. And in fact, Houston replicated Toronto by taking a humongous dump on the Boston Celtics. So the Houston Rockets won 115 to 104, and honestly, that score is kind of deceiving. Like the Houston Rockets completely abused the Boston Celtics. It was a complete drubbing. And however, but here's the thing, that was on the road. This was in the Garden. So I mean, the James Harden literally lit the Celtics like a menorah. It was a disgrace. So James Harden had 42 points. Kyrie Irving had 24 meaningless points, and the Celtics got their butt whooped in the Garden. I mean, in the first quarter, Houston out of the gate smushed the Celtics. They outscored the Celtics 33 to 23 in the first quarter. Second quarter, they outscored the Celtics 32 to 20. So by the time the first half ended, it was pretty much over. They were up 65 to 43. So, I mean, it was a complete disgrace. And the Celtics, Houston kind of knew they had it in the bag. So, Boston did outscore the Houston Rockets 26 to 15 in the fourth quarter. But you kind of hope they would fight. You knew they would fight back, because you can't go any lower than they did in the first half. But they knew they couldn't come back. It was a disgrace. From three, I remember how the Boston Celtics have been shooting bad from three. Well, didn't really change. Boston shot 28.6 from three, and then Houston shot 41.2 from three. So, yeah, just a disgrace, a complete embarrassment. So, here's the thing. Looking at these games, honestly, I don't know if I'm more angry. I don't know what's worse. Blowing that 28-point lead to the Clippers, and losing at the bucket to Rajon freaking Rondo against the Lakers, or getting blown out by the Bulls, the Rockets, and the Raptors. It was. I don't really know what's worse. It's all awful. So here's the thing. It seems like whenever they get out rebounded. So here's the two ways that the Celtics lose very badly. One, they get completely out rebounded, which happened a lot definitely happened against Chicago. It happened against Milwaukee, and and also when the Boston shoot horribly, poop from 3-point range, they also lose and get blown out. There's that too. And that was really apparent against Portland, the Raptors, the Houston Rockets. When they're shooting horribly from three, and the Boston Celtics shoot a lot of 3-pointers, and when they don't go in, they're gonna get killed. And the only reason Boston was competitive with Portland, and they actually beat the Wizards without shooting great from three, is because those teams played anemic on offense too. So, and speaking of the defense, the Celtics defense, where is it? Last year they weren't great from offense, but you could always count on them to put up a good defensive effort. Where's that defense? Where'd it go? I'm just wondering. So right now, the Boston Celtics are 5th in the Eastern Conference. They're probably, from 5th to 6th, there's a huge drop-off. So they're probably going to, so at minimum, they're probably going to get a 5th seed. But, what good does that do? Considering that this team was expected to compete for a championship, 5th seed? Really? Oh, and also, guess who they get to play next? The Golden State Warriors. In Golden State. Yeah, that'll improve things. Here I'll put it this way. If they, for some miracle, are able to beat Golden State, it could help turn the season around, because a significant win like that can pull the team together. And also, this just doesn't feel like a team. This just kind of feels like a bunch of individual guys who just want to get their points. And also, this team just won't shut up. Like, Kyrie Irving's complaining about the media. Jaylen Brown saying that this is a toxic environment. Kyrie complaining about video with him and Kevin Durant. Saying that nobody can beat them in 7 games. Marcus Smart talking about how the NBA is soft. Jason Tatum saying he'll be an all-star. Can you just please stop talking? Kyrie, if you don't want the media on you, just don't say anything. Getting blown out by the Raptors. Getting blown out by Houston in your own building. Getting blown by the freaking Chicago Bulls. All right, then we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about something. I'm actually introducing a new segment, which will be much more fun than talking about the Boston Celtics. All right, then, welcome back, and I've calmed down again. That's what the Celtics will do to you. So, all right. So next, I'm gonna do something pretty new. There are certain stories in the news that I honestly don't have a ton to talk about, but I kind of feel like it's worth bringing up on a sports show. So I decided to and since I have a lot more time since the Patriots are done for the season, and we got a little while till baseball comes around, I'm going to do a segment in which called Quick Stories, in which I go through a bunch of stories that happened, and I'll just briefly talk about them and give a quick opinion, because honestly, these stories I don't really have a ton to say. So yeah, let's quickly go through. So this is probably going to be the quickest story. So quickly, it has been 10 years since Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen have been together. So congrats to them. One of the best couples in the planet, and definitely in sports. Second story. Jason Witten surprisingly has come out of retirement. Yeah, he's coming back to the Cowboys for a 1-year deal. So, as a broadcaster, I'm going to be honest, Jason Witten was not very good. I'm sure he's a very likable guy, and it does come across in his broadcasting. I don't know, he just doesn't seem very comfortable. He didn't seem like analyzing the game didn't seem that natural to him like it did for Tony Romo. So, and I don't know how much he can contribute to the Cowboys, because he's he's kind of slow, but I'm sure he'll be there for leadership, and he'll be there when Dak Prescott really needs to get a clutch catch from a receiver, and that was definitely a surprise. So also in the news, WEI announced that they'll have guest play-by-play broadcasters for the Red Sox this year, which will include Sean McDonough, John Lewin, who's a UCLA broadcaster, and Mario Mpenba, who will rotate in the radio booth along broadcaster Joe Castiglione, who signed a multi-year extension with the Red Sox and will begin his 37th season. And also, being added to the rotation, Chris Berman, from ESPN, the back guy. Yeah, that's that Chris Berman. So I like Chris Berman. I see him more as a football guy than a baseball guy. But yeah, I do enjoy Chris Berman. So that'll be a lot of fun. And so one of the biggest news has been that a lot of the big players have gotten contracts after a long time. So first, I'll get the I'll start with the one that wasn't free agency, but actually an extension. Nolan Arenado got an 8-year, $260 million extension from the Rockies. And Manny Machado finally got signed by the San Diego Padres to a 10-year, $300 million contract. And then when I first heard that, my mouth literally dropped to the ground because that's a lot of money. And the next thing you know, Bryce Harper got a 13-year, $330 million contract with no opt-outs, which is crazy. I mean, I understand that. I understand that. I mean, this is what it was gonna take to sign these guys, but honestly, I'm not a super believer in 10-year contracts. Like, my question is, when has this ever worked? I mean, like Giancarlo Stanton, jury's still out on him. He in the postseason he stunk last year against the Red Sox. Who at that point had the richest contract ever, but not anymore. Albert Pujols has proved to not work. A-Rod, I guess you would consider that maybe a success because they did win a World Series. Even though when you get a contract like that, you would think that he would have done a little more. I mean, but he did get a World Series, so so I guess that's more worth it than Giancarlo Stanton or Albert Pujols. Who else? Let me look. Let me quickly look it up. Oh yeah, Robinson Cano has a 10-year contract, and he hadn't done anything for Seattle. Miguel Cabrera, which is probably one of the actually, it's not even a 10-year contract. It was an 8-year extension. Like that, I guess that would be worth it because he was amazing, but they didn't win anything. So, I mean, what does it amount to? And only one player with that contract has won a World Series, and that's Alex Rodriguez. So I'm pretty skeptical on 13-year contracts, and I know, I understand why San Diego did it, because I mean they're a pretty irrelevant franchise, and so this is a good way to get attention and get people in the ballpark. Because I mean, like I'm trying to think, they might be one. They're definitely in the top 5 of the most irrelevant baseball teams. And Bryce Harper and the Phillies. I could understand, even though I understand a little less because, I mean, the Phillies had good pitching, but their offense was really bad. So I understand you want to get Bryce Harper, but I don't know. I'm just not big on 13-year contracts. I don't know. Maybe I might be wrong. So Giants owner John Mara says that he is skeptical that changes will come to instant replay after the competition committee meeting. So I went over this a few weeks ago, but I'll say it again. It was very clear that there was a pass interference, and the reason the Saints weren't going to the Super Bowl is because for some reason they couldn't overturn the call, and they couldn't look at it. Are you serious? I mean, something's got to be done because, I mean, the NFL looks horrible, and if they don't change anything, I mean, you're gonna lose trust of NFL fans. Oh my God. So here's a interesting story. So at the halftime of a Bucks game, Ja Rule performed. Why he was performing at a Bucks game, I have no idea. Isn't he from New York? I don't know. Maybe he's. I mean, it must be bad when the Knicks don't want you. So apparently the place was silent, and Giannis was shooting some baskets during the performance, and everybody laughed at it on the internet. The Timberwolves said on Twitter, we were too busy hustle, scam, bamboozle, hood, led astray," and Ja Rule said that he put a curse on them. So, and he also got into a Twitter beef with Sacramento Kings. So, I I don't know if Lil B could put a curse on James Harden, then and honestly he's probably a worse rapper than Ja Rule. Then I guess anybody could do a curse. I don't know. This is I don't know. It's just has Ja Rule's career really gone down to doing halftime shows for Bucks games and like nobody caring? That's just sad. Um, Also in the news, that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar put up 4 of his championship rings for auction for charity. So great move by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And also Zion Williamson got hurt during a Duke North Carolina game and is day to day. So that's unfortunate. Also, North Carolina drubbed Duke, and so that was very unfortunate because because when you watch Duke, you really want to see Zion Williamson. Like Cam Reddish and R.J. Barrett are great players, but you want to see Zion Williamson. So that's unfortunate. All right, then. I think I'm done for today. And when we come back, we'll talk Bruins, we'll talk Celtics, and we'll see what happens in the news. So thank you for listening to J-Ho, the Sports Dude, and I'm out.